Sounds great.
All right. Well, thanks for joining. And for those of you who are watching this recording, glad that you're wanting to be a part of this discussion. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rance Bland, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Global Director for SportQuest Ministries. I have the privilege of being part of a team that serves in the North American sport movement called the Catalytic Team. I live in Albuquerque with my lovely wife of 15 years. Just celebrated our anniversary this week, and 2 kids, 5 and 2. And I just need to preface this by saying I am not an expert on the subject of time management. I am a fellow sufferer. And I don't know if you can relate to that, but a lot of times when it comes to time and our schedules, there are some pain points there that we're all dealing with. And so I'm going to share a little bit of my journey today. And it's actually because of those pain points that it drove me to want to figure out, is there a better way to do this? Is there a way to be more effective? And so what I'm sharing today is just basically what I've learned in my journey that's been helpful to me. And so why is it so hard to get things done? So I hope when we get done with this webinar today, you feel like this has been helpful. What you can expect is I've got about a 30-minute presentation, and then at the end we'll have some Q&A. And so feel free, Angie, to use the chat box and especially since it's you and me right now, I can address some of those on the fly. So
awesome.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, one other note, we are going to cover a lot today, but I will share these slides later for review. And also, we've got an online course on this same subject that just went live today. We've got 4 sessions. Hey, Lisa, glad you could join us. And so I'm going to be telling you more about that at the end, but that will really be a deeper dive. I'm going to kind of hit some of the wave tops today, but that'll be a really valuable tool for you. So let's start with why is this issue important? The issue of time management and productivity. And first of all, I just want to say that this is not just something for people who have that kind of personality that love to be organized. I don't know about Angie, Lisa, I'm getting to know you guys. You seem pretty organized. But there's some people that just hate this stuff, and that's okay. We're not all wired the same, but this is important for all of us. I love Benjamin Franklin's quote. He says, "Dost thou love life? Then don't waste time, because that's the stuff that life is made of." And so, hey, this, time is something that we're all given. It's the essential ingredient of life, and we need to figure out how to use it well. The second thing is, I really think that time management is a discipleship issue for those of us who are following Jesus. Ephesians 5:15 through 17 says, "Therefore be careful how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. So then do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is." So it's right there in scripture. We should be making the most of our time. And so I hope that's what this will help you do today. Second of all, this is really mission critical for all of us. There are some unique things about time management, I think, for ministry leaders, but no matter if you're running a nonprofit, if you're part of a church, if you're in business, if you're just trying to run your family, we all need time management skills. And I know that everyone that's on the call now and those that registered for it and are going to be watching this later, we've got great ideas and vision and goals and things that we want to see happen. And so my heart is to help us get better at managing our time and our schedules, and so that we can see those things happen, so they can come to fruition. For those of us in vocational ministry, it's not a superior calling to anyone else, but it is a different calling. There are some unique challenges, pressures, expectations that we face. And so I just want to show you some statistics. These are all about pastors, but I think it'll give us a glimpse into some of the challenges for ministry leaders. So first of all, 75% of pastors report being extremely stressed or highly stressed. No real surprise there. 90% work between 55 to 75 hours per week. 100% of those surveyed knew a colleague who had left the ministry due to burnout, church conflict, or moral failure. That's a lot. 80% believe their pastoral ministry has negatively affected their families, and 33% said it was an outright hazard. That one to me is really alarming. And then the last one, 91% have experienced some form of burnout in ministry, and 18% say they are fried to a crisp right now. Very scientific survey they did here. But you know, these statistics are really pretty alarming. And so on the one hand, it's concerning. On the other hand, hopefully it's encouraging that, you know, we're not alone when we feel this way. These are challenges that we all face. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but there are 9 signs that you're heading toward burnout. And again, I'll be sharing these slides with you later, so you can come back to this. I'll put an article link. You could dig a little bit deeper. But I think we've got to be aware of these things. And I would guess many of us could identify with some of the things here. Last reason I think this is important is just because of recent events that makes this very timely. And rather than explain that, I'm going to let this video do the talking. So take a look.
All the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me.
Carry on.
My apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
My apologies. South Korea's policy choices on North Korea have been severely limited in the last 6 months to a year because of North.
All right, so I love this video. And you know, this has been out for a few years now, and probably when we first saw it, we're like, oh, poor guy, so embarrassing. But now with the pandemic, like, we've all been that guy, right? We've all had the moments now of trying to figure out working from home, everybody crammed into small spaces, trying to get things done. And it's been challenging this past year, in addition to, you know, the emotional toll the pandemic was taking on us. And so I think that this is an important issue for us to talk about, and especially now that things are opening up, and you know, really it's time to re-engage and reset our ministry and our strategy. Our world needs us right now to step up in the wake of this past year and do the things that God has called us to do. And so again, I hope this webinar and the online course will help us to get back on track, to make time work for us, and to be more effective in what God's called us to do. So Angie, Lisa, just get a little feedback for a moment. Anything resonating with you guys so far when it comes to time management? Am I the only one?
Yes and yes. No, you're not the only one, but absolutely yes and yes. I'm absolutely there. I feel like I've got all the balls juggling, and if one drops, that I'm in big trouble. So that's why I'm really excited to learn the tips and tricks. And the video is just, it crystallizes everything. Even though I don't have young kids anymore, it just crystallizes the plight of today, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I love that video, but it definitely means something different to me now than it did before, because I can relate to both people. I can relate to the mom that's crawling in the background, trying to not be noticed. and to the dad who's just mortified. And it's the seriousness of the topic that they're discussing when that happens that
Yes.
makes it even funnier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as the time management goes, I think for me, the hardest part now is working from home 100%.
Mhm.
Before, like, it was easy to block off time because I drove home, and that meant a change in what I was working on.
Mhm.
And even the commute time meant that I could focus on prioritizing during that time. And then when I got home, I changed roles, and that helped me prioritize that time. And now it's just all blended together, and it's super hard.
Yeah, that's right. There's
Yeah.
there's not that transition that's already kind of baked in for us. I walk out my door and there's my family,
Mhm.
ready to engage. So, well, let me just share what I'd like to start with is sharing a little of my personal journey, my story, and then we'll get into just a couple of paradigm shifts that are important, and then we'll get really practical. That's kind of where we're going. So,
Great.
thanks for your feedback, guys. For me, this issue really came to a head back in 2012 when my wife and I, we had been youth pastors at a church in Texas. And then during that process felt called to start working full time with an organization called Sport Quest. That's who I work with now. And that also included moving to Belgium and just completely uprooting our life and starting this new adventure in a foreign country. And so, as you can imagine, it was a whirlwind year of preparation to get ready for that, raising support, selling our house, applying for our visa, saying goodbye to family and friends, all of those things. And then we arrived in Belgium, and it was a whole new world. And we're settling into a new home, we're learning a new language, we're making new friends, and we've got a new, ministry assignment. And so it was a wonderful time, and it was a challenging time, all at the same. We had a small team of Belgians that we were working with. Mostly what we were doing was leading sports camps, tournaments, and partnering with local churches to serve communities through sports. So that was amazing. That was basically our day job. And then at night, I was playing on a semi-pro basketball team that was about 5 nights a week. I would have practice. Saturdays were game day. Sometimes if it was a weekend tournament, I'd be playing on Sunday. So you can see already my discretionary time was kind of out the window, a lot going on. And, I enjoed it. And I just want to say there's nothing wrong with being busy. So this is not a webinar about how not to be busy or how not to find a way to not have to work hard. Working hard is a good thing. We want to get to the end of the day and know, man, I gave it my all today. And if you feel tired, then that's just kind of a sign that, you worked hard, and that's good. That's a good thing. But what I had not learned at that time in my life yet was setting any kind of intentional boundaries that would protect me from sacrificing things I didn't want to sacrifice. So while I was pursuing basketball and my ministry, there were other things that were being neglected. I didn't have as much time with my wife. My physical and emotional health was not a priority. And so these were some of the costs of my overworked, overwhelmed kind of lifestyle. And so what ended up happening was I was just working all the time. Some of the areas of my life were really lacking. And then on top of that, we were in a spiritual environment in Belgium where less than 1% of the population were Christian. It was very humanistic, secular. It felt oppressive at times. And just because we were so busy, that oftentimes leads to some isolation. You're not engaging in community and life-giving relationships. And so I was definitely heading toward burnout. And I know that wasn't unique to me because I was living in Belgium. I think for all of us who are pursuing whatever God's called us to pursue, we're going to end up in a spiritual battle. And my heart is I really want to see us be able to be effective long-term and make it for the long haul. The statistics are not great right now about people who step into ministry with excitement and passion, and after a few years they burn out and they move on to other things. And I don't want to see that. I want to see us be able to sustain what God has called us to do and do it for the long term. So back to my story. After weeks and months of kind of living in this chaos and in isolation, I finally acknowledged, hey, I was not in a healthy place. My marriage was struggling. My ministry was not as effective as it could be. And so I reached out, first of all, to a couple of friends. We began meeting together, praying, kind of holding each other accountable and encouraging one another. And then I also found a group of other like-minded leaders that I could be a part of, where I didn't have to lead the group, but there was someone that was facilitating and served as a mentor to me. Most of them are very seasoned ministry leaders, and they really helped me identify my issue with time management and a lack of boundaries in my life. And so I realized through that, okay, I've got to make some important changes. And the first change was I had to change some things with my basketball commitments. It was just too much. And I realized the grace wasn't there anymore. It was injuries, unmet expectations. It just felt like I was trying to knock down a wall that wasn't meant to be knocked over. And that was a sign to me that, God was leading me somewhere else. And so I decided I'm not going to play for that team anymore. Instead, I took an opportunity to coach a U20 basketball team, which was much better because it was only 2 to 3 nights a week that I'm gone. The games that we played on the weekends were in my province, so I'm not traveling across the country to get to games. And I have the opportunity now to invest in my players, which is, so this is a win-win. So that was a good decision that helped me. And then secondly, I just had to begin to learn boundaries and begin setting those. And so I was working from home most of that time, and I had to start setting office hours, which seemed a little weird. But I had to say, okay, there is a cutoff point now, because the work would never end. There's always things to do. But I began setting office hours for myself and creating some clear boundaries to know, okay, I'm going to unplug now and move on to other things. So that really set me on this journey to be more effective in my work and my ministry without sacrificing my marriage, my family, or even my own physical, emotional, and spiritual health. And what I'm going to share now in the next few minutes are just some of the paradigm shifts and best practices that I've learned in the past 6 years. So I'm going to actually, I know there's just a couple of us on right now, but I've got a little self-assessment tool here. Let me see if I can get it to come up. If you guys would take out your mobile phone and go to menti.com. Let's see. It's not moving forward though. Let me try this again. Okay, for some reason it's not wanting to respond. All right, well, I'll tell you what, we're gonna move on, having technical difficulties. So let's talk about, first of all, we've got to identify the problem when it comes to productivity. And so we have a couple of enemies. And the first one is a very ugly, mean looking guy here. And this is Mr. Ambiguity, all right? So ambiguity, see, most of us are involved in what Peter Drucker, you're familiar with him, great author, business leader, nonprofit voice. He describes our work as knowledge work, says we're in a knowledge economy. And for most of us, that means our job involves sifting through a lot of information and communication each day. We've got a ton of messages coming at us, emails, meeting requests. We're planning and preparing for a talk we're going to give, or a meeting we've got to lead, or even as a coach or a fitness trainer, you're preparing for for your next practice or training, maybe an appointment with a donor. You're managing people, budgets, and calendars. Okay, this is all knowledge work. And to be effective in this kind of work, you have to be really good at leading yourself. There's no one looking over your shoulder most of the time telling you what to do. So we have to lead ourselves. We have to define our priorities and clarify our next actions. So ambiguity wants to make it hard for us to know what to do next and confuse us about what's most important. Here's enemy number 2, overload. You don't need me to tell you guys that in this day and age, there is so much information coming at us all the time. I would say that there is more data at our fingertips in a day than most people a few generations ago had access to in a year. I mean, it's insane how fast it's accelerated. So overload tries to distract us so we can't focus. It tries to overwhelm us so we can't be present, and dominate us with urgent but not important information. So in order to fight and overcome these enemies, we need to do 3 things. We need to find our rhythm, draw the line, and then we're going to optimize our toolkit. So Rachel, thanks for joining us. Just want to remind you guys,
thanks for having me. Thank you.
You bet. Yeah, thanks for being here. And feel free, if you guys have questions that come up, if just catch it while while it's fresh, put it in the chat box, and then I'll make sure we come back to those at the end. So, all right, here's what we're going to do: find our rhythm, draw the line, and optimize our toolkit. So let's start with finding our rhythm. God designed us to be productive. All right, but we have misunderstood this and built our identities around our activities. We have become human doings, not human beings. We need a rhythm of life that allows us to be fruitful while also prioritizing rest. You know, a lot of people talk about balance, work-life balance. I think that's a misleading word. Balance is really a myth. It's almost impossible to achieve, and you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. I prefer the word rhythm. If we go back to the beginning, to the creation story, I think we'll see some of the original rhythms that God designed us to live in. So in the creation story, what day were humans created? Which day were they created on? Pop quiz.
6.
Yes, great job, Rachel. Okay, day 6.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all right. I'm just making sure you're awake.
Yeah.
So what happened on day 7?
They rested.
They rested, right. So normally we think about, well, that was God's day of rest. But I believe it was also, he invited them into that day of rest. And then, believe me, there was tons of work to do, right? They were naming the animals, caring for the animals, cultivating all of creation. But that started after day 7. So the first full day of human existence was a day of rest. And I think there's a really important principle here that God designed us to work from our rest instead of rest from our work. All right. So in other words, we tend to just rest from our work because work is the priority. So we work all week long, and then we just kind of crash on the weekend and try to rest for a little bit before we go back to work. But instead, what if we prioritized rest so that our work flowed out of that? We're giving from a place of strength and health and life. And I think that's more of how God intended it to be. So we need to work from our rest. And this little semicircle graphic is a great picture. Imagine this being like a pendulum, where that line with the ball on the end is just swinging back and forth. And so we see in John 15, Jesus talks about this rhythm. And he says, first we abide in Christ, then we go and bear fruit. All right, then often we enter into a time of pruning so that we can abide again and then go back and be fruitful again. So fruitfulness happens in these stages and seasons. We abide, we grow, we bear fruit, we're pruned, and then we abide. Growth seems to be the result of the right rhythm. Growth, though, is not the same as bearing fruit. Sometimes we mistake spiritual growth for the fruit itself, but we must grow before we see the fruit. Bearing fruit is natural for the healthy branch, but pruning is not automatic. If you leave a branch on its own and just let it keep growing and more and more leaves, the weight of that growth will actually damage and break the branch. So the branch has to be pruned back in order to continue to be fruitful. And I wonder if maybe this is why sometimes our ministries aren't producing as much fruit as we would hope for, because we're just trying to work, grow, more and more. Are we taking the necessary time to abide with Christ, to align our will with his will? Are we paying attention when he desires to prune us back into this season of pruning and maybe deeper focus on relationship and rest, so that we can be more fruitful? So I think this is a crucial just kind of mindset for us to understand the rhythms that God has designed us for. But the next step in this is we've got to learn to draw the line. And if you get into the online course, you're going to understand why I've got pictures of some boats here, but I don't have time to go into it now. So you'll just have to be left in suspense until you get into the course. But in our culture, we don't like to talk about limits. All right. In basically most Western culture, especially here in America, we want to do it all. We want to have it all. Don't tell me I can't do it. Right. But no matter how hard we may try to resist it, we do have limits. There's a few things leaders must remember about limits. No leader has the capacity to do it all. All right. So we shouldn't try to be Superman or Superwoman and do it all. We need to work within our capacity, but we all have differing capacities. So we shouldn't try to compare ourselves. We're not trying to be like the leader that we see that is successful. We need to learn to appreciate what they have to offer and contribute, but we should be trying to find what is our contribution within our own capacity. And we want to play to our strengths. Leaders need to assess their capacities, because again, we're not all the same. Capacity is a function of the following. I'm going to give you 3 things that kind of make up our capacity. Number 1 is constitution, 2 is preparation, and 3 is season. Let me explain those. So constitution is assessing our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual makeup. So again, that's not the same for all of us. Preparation is assessing our degree of skill, education, and experience relative to the task. And then season is relative to our life commitments, our age, our stage of life. Okay, so certainly if you have young children at home, you're in a very different season and have a very different capacity than maybe like an empty nester or a single student, for example. So we need to assess our capacity based on those things. And then we can lead within our capacity. So this involves honoring our limits. Burnout, like we talked about earlier, really stems from dishonoring the limits that God has set for us. I mean, it's baked into creation when we have 24 hours in a day. We don't get to shift that, according to our preferences, and we all need sleep. And if we decide, no, I don't need sleep, well, we're going to end up burning out. I mean, there's just there's nothing we can do about that. There are limits. And I just want to say, there are also seasons of intense work where that's actually really necessary. Certainly if you're starting a business or you're starting a ministry, that initial season can be very intense. There are other times where it's very intense, but we get in trouble when the season becomes a lifestyle. And it's just, you're always on, always at that level. We can't sustain that. So if you build an organization or a team that's wise to its capacities, what we'll get is a healthy leader and a happy organization or happy people. So that is how we draw the line. Lastly, we want to optimize our toolkit. So this is the fun part where we get to get practical and talk about the little tips and tricks that we've learned. But again, we've got to start with those paradigm shifts and mindsets, or else these practical tools won't really help us. But there's a few things that you need in your toolkit, and these have been so helpful for me. The first one is the ideal week and the 3-3-3 system. Number 2 is the capture tool and time activated task. And I'm not talking about a lasso or a net, or, you know, to capture something. Well, I'll explain what a capture tool is here in a moment. Number 3, meeting mojo. We're going to get our meeting mojo back. And number 4, who wants to eradicate some emails? Anybody with me? Okay, email eradicator. That will be our 4th one here. So here's the first one, the ideal week in the 3-3-3 system. So what you're looking at on your screen is an example of an ideal week. This is the week you would have if you could control 100% of your time. That's why it's called the ideal week, because it'll never happen, right? But the practice is very helpful, because it will help you consider your priorities and how you're allocating your time. So instead of just starting from scratch every week, this will help you create some patterns and some routines. And actually, humans work way better from routines than we do from lists. If I have to go back to my list and check what I'm supposed to be doing every 5 minutes, that's not as effective as when I build in these kind of habits and routines. So you want to divide your week into time zones, like you see here, representing the main roles and responsibilities of your life. You don't want to get too detailed. And of course, these will also change a little from week to week, but you'll start to see those patterns and routines emerge. And you want to think in terms of 3 categories. And on the left-hand, far left column, you'll see those 3 categories. It's self-care, relationships, and work. And they're in that order for a reason. Typically, we start by planning our work, and then we have no time for self-care and maybe just a little time for relationships. But it's kind of like when, you know, it seems selfish, right? But when you're on a plane and they're talking about the oxygen mask and you're traveling with your child, they tell you put your own oxygen mask on first. And the reason is because you're no good to your child if you can't breathe. And so it's the same thing with self-care. If we're not healthy, we can't serve others. We can't give from a place of strength and health and wholeness. And so, you know, obviously you can take this to the extreme and make it all about you. But for most of us who are part of in ministry, that's not our issue. We tend to be on the other side of that. And so we need to prioritize this. So we want to ask ourselves with each of those 3 categories, what are the non-negotiables that contribute to our health and effectiveness? And then we make a list for each category, focusing on the essentials rather than the ideals. And then you just plot those into the time slots in your ideal week. Another thing that this helps with is mega batching and deep work. So mega batching is, let's say, for example, here on Monday, it says create show notes and record podcasts. Let's say you've got 3 episodes of a podcast to record. If you can stack those 3 hours on Monday, then you're not switching back and forth between other tasks. There's no distractions. You're able to just put all your energy into that one thing. That's called mega batching. I know some people put all their meetings on one day of the week. They stack them back to back to back. And they just like that better. Some people don't. But the other thing it helps with is deep work. So you can also see on this template, there's a spot for new content creation, public speaking, or media interviews. Now, that may not pertain to you, but there are some larger projects like that where 10, 15 minutes, you know, here and then another 20 minutes there, and 10, that's just not going to be really effective. You need 2 or 3 hours of focused, deep work to really be effective in that. And so working through this ideal week can help you kind of plan out some time blocks where you've got the time to put more time towards these larger projects that you may have, or writing, or whatever it may be, and get into deep work, which will be much more effective than multitasking and being distracted all the time. The next part of this is the 3-3-3 system, and it goes hand in hand. This is where my paper planner is really helpful. I've got it right here. I use the full focus planner, and it's got all of this already in that planner. And so the 3-3-3 is quarterly, weekly, and daily. Okay, each 3 pertains to thinking quarterly, weekly, and daily. And so you start with the quarterly. What are my 3 most important priorities in the next 90 days? So that's the 3 is going to stand for your 3 biggest priorities. So start with the upcoming quarter. What are the 3 things most important? I got to get these done. And then you move to weekly and think about, okay, in the coming week, what are my 3 biggest priorities? And then you do this every day. What are my 3 biggest priorities today? And so then what is really helpful is to set up a review. So every quarter you're having a quarterly review and you're looking back at the last quarter going, hey, how did I do on my priorities? What did I learn? How's that going to help me plan for the next quarter? And then you do that for the week. Generally, my weekly review takes place, maybe 30 minutes on a Sunday afternoon. And I look back over the past week and I plan ahead for the coming week and get those things into my planner, my paper planner. So which is really helpful. Anything I didn't get done the week before, I roll it over and into the next week. And then on a day-to-day basis, it's been really helpful to go, okay, if I get nothing else done, these 3 things are the most important. And I try to put my energy there first before all the other things. So that's the 3-3-3 system, the ideal week. The second one, the capture tool and time activated tasks. These actually refer to a lot of apps that are available to us that help us with this. And what this has to do with is, how do you keep up with the things you've got to remember? Do you have lists everywhere? I know for me, I had like sticky notes. I would sometimes put it in a Word doc, sometimes an Excel spreadsheet, sometimes, Google Drive, other times the notes app on my phone. I'm writing stuff on the fridge. And then when I get to the moment where it's like, okay, I know I wrote that down, but where did I put it? And I could never find anything, right? So it's important to have one tool where you're capturing all those things you've got to remember. And then the other nice thing about these tools is they're time activated. So for example, let's say I'm in a meeting and it's like, okay, there's an action step that I've got to do before the next meeting. That needs to be done. I look at my schedule on Thursday afternoon. Well, I can write that. I just open my app, I write it in, whatever that action step is, and I can date it Thursday. I'm going to work at that Thursday at 1 o'clock. That's when I want to be reminded. I can forget it, and then my app is going to remind me at Thursday at 1 o'clock. I'll have a notification. It's time to do this. And I also, of course, it's a habit now. I look at that app every day when I'm planning my schedule because it's got all those things that I've captured. And I use this for work. I use this for home. I walk my dogs every day. You can set up repeating reminders. So the things you're going to do daily or weekly or monthly, you can make them repeat. And so again, it's freeing up your kind of brain space and energy to not have to try to remember those things. And the app will remind you. So I actually use Todoist, the one there at the top. It's just for me the easiest to use for my personal task management. I use Asana and Basecamp more for project management and team management. And so all of these tools have team and project management features as well. I haven't used the bottom 3, but these are all tools you could look into. But I do highly recommend them. And by the way, I just use the free versions. You can do paid, but I've not needed that. We're almost finished here. Meeting Mojo. Apparently, most people hate meetings. I don't know about you guys, but that's kind of what I hear. But you know what? I think meetings are really important because it's in meetings where communication happens, where decisions get made, and because of meetings, eventually things get done. So I don't think we need to get rid of meetings. We just need to get rid of bad meetings. And one of the things that can really help you is to know what kind of meeting you're leading, especially if you find yourself leading a lot of meetings. And so here's 4 types. Number 1 is the stand-up meeting. It's actually what it sounds like. You stand up, because if you sit down, people get comfortable and they take longer. This is a 5 to 10 minute meeting just to update each other on, hey, what are you doing today? A regular team or staff meeting is designed to make decisions about how to move the ball forward and define and adjust priorities for the week or the month, depending on how often you're meeting. Strategic meeting would be choosing one big picture item that you need to hash out and solve. This might be a monthly or quarterly thing. And then an evaluation meeting would be even less frequent, where you're evaluating the culture that you're creating. Hey, how are we doing as a team? And so when you know the kind of meeting you're leading, you don't get them mixed up, it becomes much more focused and purposeful to accomplish your objective. And then the other thing that will help with your meeting mojo is just coming to the meeting prepared. So much of bad meetings is just not being prepared for the meeting. And so here's what I do. This is just what works for me. I have a Google Doc for every team that I'm in. So I mentioned earlier, I'm part of the catalytic team with Lisa for the North American sport movement. So I have a Google Doc called Catalytic Team Meetings. That is a very easy thing to remember. I don't have to go looking for that name. And then for every meeting, I've got my agenda that I've put together in that document. I date it. And then, the next 2 weeks later, when we meet again, I put the next one above that. So I'm not scrolling down to the very bottom. But right now I could go back and see meeting agendas from 2 years ago, but I have no reason to. But what this does is it allows me before the meeting to get prepared in what we need to talk about. During the meeting, I've got that document open. I'm capturing action steps or anything I need to highlight. We also have someone taking, more detailed notes. But then in between meetings, when let's say I get an email, I'm talking to someone, I read a book, I think, hey, we need to talk about this with that team, or this is something we need to discuss. Then I just open that document and I type it in, and that way I don't lose it, and I can make sure we address that the next time. I also have a Google Doc for every direct report that I meet with regularly. So Angela, you're on the call. I've got an Angela Blackwell Google Doc, and it's got all of our meetings in there and what we talk about. So, time goes by, I can go back and refer to that, pick up where we left off, and it helps me show up much more prepared. And then for each project that I'm working on. So, for example, one of the things I've worked on recently is a development plan for our organization, and I've been talking about that with my boss, Kent. So in my Google Doc for Kent, what I've done is just hyperlinked that development plan into that meeting document. And then that way I'm not going to lose it in the sea of Google Docs. I don't have to remember what was the name of that. It's hyperlinked there. So the next time I talk with Kent, I just click that link and it opens up, the project that we're going to be talking about. So those are things that have helped me stay organized and come prepared to meetings. All right, the last thing is the email eradicator. How do we process our inbox down to 0 every day? And I know for some of us, we've got thousands of emails in our inbox. And so this seems very daunting, but I remember the first time I finally got my inbox down to 0, and this is what it looked like. I was so happy, I took a screenshot of my inbox. It was the first time I was like, it says no new mail. This is amazing. So I hope I can help you get your inbox like this. So that's the goal. You want to process down to 0 every day. And so something that's really important is don't just leave your inbox open all day where you're ding, ding, notification, and you're wanting to just constantly respond. It's better to actually set specific times in your schedule where you're going to process email, maybe 3 times during the day when, all right, now I'm opening my inbox, I'm going to start going through these. The next thing is don't use your inbox as a to-do list or holding tank for these large project items. I used to do that. I think a lot of people do that. It's not a good use of time and energy. It'd be way better to go through your emails, capture to-do items, put them in that app that you're using, that task manager, and let that remind you. And so you want to go through your emails in order. Don't jump around to your favorites. And what ends up happening is you have to read them multiple times. You want to read it once and deal with it. So process them at one at a time and never put anything back into your inbox. So you open it, and dealing with it means either if you can answer it in less than 2 minutes, you do it now. So just immediate response. Or if it's going to take longer, you file it into a folder where it can be organized, and you capture that in your task manager so that I know I need to respond back to that email from so-and-so, and it's in this folder. And then I can, go back and do it at an intentional time. The last thing is we could write better emails, but this is in the online course. I won't take time to go through how to do that, but just the way that we write our emails could help save time for us and our team members. And so there's 7 steps that I hope will help you manage your inbox. So that's it. I know that was a lot of information. Thank you guys for hanging with me there. I'd like to see if there's any questions and just be able to respond to those. Before I do that though, I just want to tell you a little bit about this online course that's going to go deeper into this subject. This is our website. There's learning community at the top. So we have an online platform with all kinds of courses and great content in there. The time management and productivity course launched today and is part of this learning community. And so would love for you to go deeper into that, and it'll give you just space to reflect on some of these things we talked about, put together your own takeaways and actually implement it. And so normally the learning community is $39 for 12 months of access. But for the next 72 hours, because you're on the webinar, giving you a promo code, it's time29, and you'll get it for $29, which is 25% off. So hope that helps, give you a little incentive to go ahead and do that, get in there and check out the course. So, and I will put in just a moment in the chat box the registration form, so you can just go directly there if you want to. So that's it, guys. Do we have any questions? Anything I could address specifically?
How long did it take you, Rance, to get yourself organized like this?
Well, it's definitely an ongoing process. I would say probably what took the longest was just some of the mindset, changes, and understanding that setting boundaries didn't mean I was being selfish or not working hard enough, or there's just some of those just beliefs that sometimes we grow up with that I had to kind of deal with. Once I had this kind of understanding, I'd say it was maybe 6 months where I was really intensely trying to learn and then put these things into practice. And then over time they become a habit, and I have to tweak occasionally. And there's even things I talked about today that I'm going, I should be more intentional about that again. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, for me, maybe it's not a question, but my taking away would be today: work from your rest than rest from your work. Wow, that is, it means a lot to me. So, but I wonder how, yes, as she was asking, it really takes discipline. And how did you kind of discipline yourself to be able to just read your email 3 days? So how 3 times a day? How can you manage that?
Yeah. Well, and actually it's funny you mentioned that, because that's the one that I'm going, I need to be more intentional about that one again, because I do tend to sometimes still work with my inbox open. But I've also, I guess it's a little easier because I don't have thousands of emails in my inbox right now. I do normally process it down to 0 every day. But still, it would be more helpful just for that deep work to not, have that open, not be looking when messages come in and say, I'm just going to read those emails at a certain time. But, when it comes to the working from your rest, one of the things, just to very practically, especially now that I have a family, we've really tried to get intentional about Sabbath, which, is just not something that I feel like, even though it's in the 10 Commandments, right, we've kind of gotten away from these days. And we go to church and that kind of is supposed to be Sabbath for us. But we've really started on Saturday nights, just completely unplugging, not working, not checking messages, having a nice family dinner together. We actually do the Lord's Supper together as a family on those nights. And then we go to church on the next day, but we also just try to have some fun as a family, try to give my wife, and then she also tries to give me some time to ourselves. So it's just restful. And because we've been doing that for a while now, like I've gotten really good at unplugging on the weekends, and I love it, but there are some challenges. Like if you're a coach, like I was talking about earlier, and your games are on the weekend, you may have to find a different time to make sure that you're able to unplug and do some things that are going to be life-giving. So anyway, I hope that helps, Rachel.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Rance, how do you encourage other people to follow these tips and tricks?
Well, I would say, I feel like what we did just now was like drinking from a fire hydrant, right? And so the online course will help you go just step by step through it at your own pace. So that's why we designed that. I think it will be a very helpful tool to help people kind of process these things and then begin slowly implementing them. And in the beginning, what helped me the most was having other people. I was in this group that I was meeting with, I think it was every other week. And there was just an accountability with that, and a lot of encouragement. It kept my focus there, because it was hard in the beginning to change these habits that I had developed over a long period of time. And so being a part of community, being a part of that group really helped me make those changes. Yeah. Okay, maybe one more question. Anything else?
Rance, what was the name of you talked about a paper planner? What was that called?
It's called this one is the Full Focus Planner. And, if you've ever heard of Michael Hyatt, he's actually one of my sources for a lot of what I've been talking about. But they design the planner, and you can find it at fullfocusplanner.com.
Okay.
And it's great. And I love having, I've got obviously a digital calendar and everything's on my computer and my phone, but it's really nice just to have paper as well.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, for like, I'm looking at Friday, right now.
Okay.
Over here, my daughter drew me a picture. And that just kind of keeps me in tune. And then I can take notes in there. And so just having that combined with the digital tools is really helpful.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Well, guys, thanks. We went, and yeah, Rachel, it is Full Focus Planner. No spaces or anything in between the word, just fullfocusplanner.com. But thanks for your patience, guys. It was a little longer than intended today, but hopefully it was helpful. And really appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks,
wow.
Rachel. It's great to connect with you again.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.